It is my great honor to welcome you to the European Space Agency's Career Day here in Riga, Latvia. The day, as you probably noticed, is held in conjunction with Deep Tech Atelier, the largest deep tech event in the Baltic region. And the event today is organized by the Ministry of Education and Science of the Republic of Latvia, the Latvian Development and Investment Agency, and of course the European Space Agency. My name is Ines Asuja, and I have a great honor today to be in the role of the moderator. I hope we are going to have 2 very interesting hours ahead of us. And you will learn a lot and leave the room very inspired and motivated to proceed with pursuing the career in the space sector. Latvia joined European Space Agency in 2020 as an associate member. And joining the ESA family, as I say, as an associate member, has opened door to many internship and job opportunities for Latvian students, young as well as experienced professionals. And these opportunities, I think we have not even grasped about all the possibilities that this network and this organization is offering. And consequently, the ESA Career Day is all about showing you the doors to the fascinating opportunities and boundless potential that ESA may offer. And over the next 2 hours, we will hear stories from ESA employees, from people who have gone in various capacities and still are with ESA today. And I hope you will have gained also better understanding of how ESA runs and what are the employment options that the organization provides. And we will conclude the session with networking possibilities. As you saw, there are nice snacks and refreshments still outside waiting for you. And I encourage you to approach our speakers, to ask the questions that probably you did not dare to ask during the event. Also, I encourage you to do so. And also to talk to other attendees. I think we are a very nice audience here today, and we have to make the best out of that. Before we begin, just a few very practical announcements. First of all, a minute of advertising. There are still possibilities to apply for the Deep Tech event. The registration is still open, and as you see, very nice stages are being built for tomorrow and the day after. And tomorrow and the day after, there will be 3 topics on the stages. Tomorrow we will have European Space Day, we will have the Deep Tech Day, and also the Biotech Day. And it's a bunch of distinguished speakers attending the event, so I guess it's going to be a wonderful opportunity to learn a lot on state of the art and the developments around the technologies in space and biology. Back to today's event. We will have an option to ask questions to our speakers. We are going to have 3 of them. After each presentation, we will take a couple of questions immediately, right from the audience. Please feel free, encouraged to do so. We are not in a very formal setting, so really I encourage you to do so. Nevertheless, if you feel like more comfortable to submit the question, you have an option for that as well, and we will be using the Slido platform. So if you log into the website www.slido.com and enter the hashtag ESA, so you can post your question right there. All the questions that will be submitted via Slido will be addressed after all 3 presentations are over. I will invite all 3 speakers here on this very cozy stage, and we will have some 20 to 25 minutes concluding conversation or discussion where we can address all the questions that were not addressed during the presentations. Does it sound like a plan? Perfect. So then we will start with our first speaker, and I am very honored to invite on the stage Andrew Kane. I will try to say who you are, Andrew, and former trainee of the European Space Agency's Young Graduate Trainee Program. So far, correct? Very good. And but now Andrew works for ESA as a coordinator of student internship programs and probably many other tasks, as it is common for ESA. So Andrew, it's a pleasure to have you with us today, and the floor is yours. And we can just applaud.
Okay. Yep, you can hear me. Okay, hopefully you can see the screen on either side. So as mentioned, yes, my name is Andrew Kane. I'm the entry-level program coordinator at ESA. So I'm going to mainly focus on the careers on the entry-level side. So for those of you who are students or recently graduated, just as a show of hands, do we have any high school students here? Yeah, couple, great. Any bachelors, masters, PhDs? People who are already in professional experience? Great, we have something for everyone, so that's the main point. So just a very quick overview. How many of you have actually heard of ESA before? Like by a quick show of hands, because not everyone has. Wow, this is great. Latvian delegation doing an excellent job. So, but just as a very quick overview of who we are and what we do. So what do? We have 22 member states, which you'll see down here. Myself, I'm from the UK, which you see the flag here. So you might know after Brexit that we're not the European Union at ESA. We actually have a lot of the same member states, but we have Switzerland, UK, Norway, and we even have Canada as a cooperating state. So we're slightly different, but we do work closely with the European Union. We have about 2,500 staff, which are located across all of our establishments, which I will explain. Our headquarters is in Paris, where I used to work. But we even have the spaceport in French Guiana, which is where we launch, we'll soon be launching again a lot of our missions and projects. Why? So we're exclusively for the use of space for peaceful purposes. This is something that makes us stand out from some of our national space agencies and some of the other partners we have in the world. And how much does it cost? So about 12 euros a year per each European citizen. Sometimes when I'm in events like in Switzerland, I always say that it's the price of a cinema ticket. I couldn't say that there because it's quite expensive over there. But I think 12 euros, maybe a few drinks, maybe in Riga or something. It's not so bad value considering what you get from it. And I'll explain a bit. So you'll see here, what exactly do we do? So we're actually active in every single area of the space sector, which in some regards makes us a bit more broader than, let's say, some of our partners like NASA. But I'd say one of the places to highlight where we are world leaders is in science and technology. Just this is also part of the reason we're here today. I would particularly highlight our Earth observation and navigation directorates. So if you use Google Maps today, for example, you are probably using some of our navigation technology, or if you're interested in combating the climate crisis, you're probably using some of the data that we use with the European Commission from our Copernicus program. And in addition to that, we have over 80 satellites developed, tested, and operated since we were founded in 1975. And as mentioned before, we launched them from the European spaceport down in Kourou in French Guiana. So you'll see, apart from the office that we have, the spaceport, a few small ones located elsewhere, our main establishments in these locations in Europe. So as a very quick tour de table, our, let's say, administrative and political heart is in Paris, in headquarters. In ESEC, which is in Redou in Belgium, we have our cybersecurity competencies building up there, as well as our education team, which I'll explain a bit more about for the high school students that are here. ESTEC, where I work now, it's also where Emils and Gertrude, who will speak later, are working. It's our biggest establishment. It's a really beautiful place to work, which I'll go into a bit more about the advantages of working at ESA. But essentially, it's our technical heart. That's where a lot of our engineering and science work is done. My favorite site is the European Astronaut Center in Cologne, which is where we help to train our astronauts and our partner space agency astronauts. Really cool place. You can kind of hang out and have coffee with the astronauts in the coffee corner, and you think nothing of it if you're working there, but if you're like myself and you're not working in that every day, really cool. Our operations center is not so far away, down in Darmstadt, close to Frankfurt, also in Germany. Essentially, that's where we try and keep the stuff that we put up into space up there and make sure everything's working well. Also, I mentioned before our Earth observation program, which is world leading. That's based just outside of Rome in a place called Frascati, which we call Ezrin. Very beautiful site, rolling hills, olive trees, very cheap, delicious pizza as well. I would highlight that. And another really cool site is the one just outside Madrid, which is our science hub. It's in a place called Villafranca, up in the mountains. And they even have their own little castle on site, which is really cool. But it's really our science hub. But the reason I'm here is to talk a bit about all of these programs here, and based on the hands that you were shown, it seems like we have one for everyone. So I'm just going to run through quickly each of these. So yeah, first is our student internship program. So every year we have around 250 interns who join ESA across all of those various sites that I mentioned before. The key thing to know here is that it's for 3 to 6 months. Very exceptionally, we can go up to 9 months. But the other key thing to know is you must still be a student. About 80% of our interns are master's students. But if you're a bachelor student, I would strongly encourage you to apply as well, because we do take in bachelor students. The other criteria is that you're from one of our member states or associate member states. So you see the Latvian flag down here. So you are absolutely eligible and encouraged to apply. This will open every November. We do a campaign. It's open for the whole month. You apply, and then you can start basically any time in the next year. So most of the interns start coming in January or February, but we can align it to what works for your university with your program. And these are based, like I said, across all of our establishments, except the spaceport down in Kourou. So it's mainly the ones in Europe. And it's across every kind of area that we have at ESA, which I'll go into a bit more soon. Yes, so this is the one that I was formerly a young graduate trainee. We have Emil's, who's also a current young graduate trainee. This is, let's say, our flagship entry-level program. Because it's really, unlike the internship opportunity, you can consider it a kind of a first full work experience. So we call it a traineeship, but for 1 to 2 years, most of our YGTs will do 2 years. You're essentially fully paid as an ESA staff member, working across all of the subjects that we have at the agency. The difference with this and the intern program is that you must have graduated by the time that you start. So you can't do it at the same time as your studies, and it must be a master's degree. So for those of you who are thinking about whether to do bachelor or master's, you should know that to work at ESA as a staff member, you need to get that master's degree, because all of our jobs will have that requirement, in addition to the citizenship requirement, which Latvia is eligible for. And the difference here is that the programs open every February. So we're actually going through the recruitment right now for the current batch. And there's 112 positions every year. It might even increase in the future, but those 112 positions are across all of the establishments I mentioned, but even Washington, D.C., we have Vienna for some of the more political positions, Brussels as well. And we even have a young graduate trainee who's based down in French Guiana, which is very cool. I haven't had the chance to go yet, but from the photos he's been sending, really nice. And like the intern positions, all of the vacancies will be published on our jobs.esa.int website. It's the only way you can apply, because we are a taxpayer-funded organization, and so equality of opportunity is really important. So we have a standardized process. It's really nice if you want to take the initiative and try to send an email to could be myself, or some people even email directly our Director General, which I don't always advise, but you will be told the same answer. Always go and apply through here. So it's a fair process for everyone. But this, I think Emil's is going to talk a bit more about his particular experience as a YGT, but all I can say is it's probably the highlight of my professional experience. Before I joined ESA, my career has been a bit random in a way. I started as a football commentator, then I worked as an investment banker, then I worked as a videographer, and then now I'm at ESA. So it's quite varied, but I can hand on heart say that it's really the best place that I've ever worked. Now, this one is really interesting because you'll see down here Latvia from 2025. So the national trainee program is essentially the same as a young graduate trainee, except it's kind of a second opportunity for the eligible countries to apply to get some experience at ESA. And the intention with Latvia is that there will be some funding to sponsor some Latvian students in particular, master students to come join ESA for 1 to 2 years at the end of their studies. In terms of when this will be formalized, we expect early 2025, so pay attention, because in an ideal situation, you would first get the chance to apply to the Young Graduate Trainee Program, and then you would have a second opportunity to go through this track as well. And to be discussed where the roles will be, but generally I think we're quite open as to where these positions will come. It's basically the exact same conditions as a young graduate trainee, but just for Latvians, so that's really good. Remind me, show of hands, for those doing a PhD or thinking of doing one. I think we have a few, yeah. So the research fellowship program might be relevant for you because it's essentially like a postdoc. But somewhere in between professional experience and a postdoc, it's 2 to 3 years of a contract. Most of our postdocs do 3 years, so they extend beyond the 2-year contract. And it gives you a chance to pursue your research passion, particularly in the area of any kind of space-related activities. This one's a bit different from the Young Graduate Trainee Program and the internships because we don't have 1 month of the year when we have the opportunities. They're really published throughout the year. Again, at our jobs.esa.int website. I would say you can go onto there and set up some job alerts if you are interested in pursuing this, because you'll get a notification as soon as a research fellowship position is published. Or you can even create a bookmark and check every 2 to 3 weeks, because our vacancies are open for 3 to 4 weeks usually. And this is actually our latest program. So for those of you who are already working, how many people, postmasters? We've got a couple. This might be the program for you, because it's essentially for those who have between 2 to 3 years of experience. There's a bit of flexibility with regards to that. But it's kind of a bridge between a full staff position and a young graduate trainee position. The idea at the end of your 3 years as a junior professional, you're integrated as a full ESA staff member. And again, the same nationality criteria continue with the flags you see below. But the really interesting part of this program, there's a mandatory rotation either internally in ESA to another establishment, or you can go externally on a secondment. So we have a junior professional right now who's going to Japan. We have some who are going to Germany, to UK from their various sites for 6 months to 1 year to get some of that experience and then bring it back to ESA. And the feedback from this program so far has been very positive. And at the end of the year, we will go to our member states to ask to do the program again. And hopefully we get the go-ahead to start and relaunch the program in early 25 as well. So keep your eyes peeled for that. And then also for those, this is not necessarily one of my entry-level programs, but I just want to highlight for those who are thinking of doing a PhD or postdoc, ESA also offers the opportunity for co-funded research. So up to €90,000 or 50%. And it's essentially, we provide you access to our world-class laboratories and expertise and testing facilities, and the technical support of ESA experts while you're doing your PhD or your postdoc. So the feedback I've had from a lot of those taking the more academic route is they would like to do this co-funded research for their PhD and then apply for the research fellowship position for their postdoc. And this is open all year long, but unlike the other entry-level programs, you apply through a website called ideas.esa.int, and it's essentially where you will find the more of the information around this, and you can submit any proposal you have at any time, fulfilling the criteria listed on the website. But if you think of any kind of idea you have that might have some applicability to space that's a bit innovative, you stand a really good chance of participating in this program. And then for those who are in high school about to enter their bachelor's degree, and for those still bachelor, master, or PhD level, we also have the ESA Academy, which is not an entry-level program either. However, it's mainly done in our site based in Belgium, in our education center, but we will pay for you to come over and get some training courses related to space. So it's a really good chance, if you have no background in space, to get some space on your CV. You can apply through the ESA Academy website, and the opportunities are published throughout the year. Some of them might be online, some of them might be for a day, a week, couple of weeks, summer school. They're really quite varied to fit into a program that might be relevant for you. And again, Latvia, as an associate member of ESA, is an eligible member state for this, associate member state. So I'd encourage you, if you're thinking of applying for the young graduate trainee position or an internship, this is a really good way to get space on your CV. I'll come on to the tips a bit later about how to get into ESA, but I think the vast majority of the people who apply, for example, to the young graduate trainee program, they don't mention space on their CV. And it's not a prerequisite, but it obviously helps if you've already got a bit of this experience or passion. It shows that you're a bit more motivated. So this is definitely really one of our more attractive propositions for current students. So this graphic is also on our website. I hope you can see it, but if not, when you go on our website, I would encourage you to just follow the pathway, and you can see which program is for you. The ones in yellow are the ones that I'm responsible for, the entry level, but it also mentions the staff position for those of you who are more interested in, who have a bit more experience, about 3 years and above, as well as the ESA Academy and the co-funded research. So I'll let you take the photos for those who are doing it. Okay, good. So what exactly would you be working on? So I'd say the vast majority of our positions are indeed engineering. It's essentially what the real heart of what we do at the European Space Agency, and across every kind of domain in engineering that you can think. So for sure, the mechanical, electrical system. But what I would say for nearly all of these subjects, there's actually quite a lot of transversal topics that you could be studying at university that would apply to all of those. You don't necessarily have to have studied aerospace engineering to work in an aerospace engineering job. I have lots of young graduate trainees who apply who might be studying computer science, for example, and find that the skills or some of the languages they might be learning, whether Python or Rust, might be completely applicable to an area that they weren't thinking of applying to. So I'll take this opportunity for those who are thinking of the young graduate trainee position or the interns. We do have over 100 positions for YGT and 200 for interns. You have a whole month to apply. Really read through every single vacancy, because you might not guess from the title that you might be totally a good fit and eligible to apply for that position. And I would say that that's true for a lot of our engineering jobs. But of course, we also do have some of the specific engineering métier to consider as well. I'd say the next biggest thing about what we do at the agency is science. So for sure, the planetary and space science might be the thing that you first think of when it comes to astronomy, but don't forget we have our life and material sciences. So we have some great teams who are working on when we have our astronauts who are up in space, hopefully soon on the moon and maybe in the future on Mars. How can we survive there? How can we work and live there? We have a life sciences team dedicated to that. We also have the science related to our world-leading Earth observation team as well as some applied mathematics. So this is about 20% of what we do at ESA, I'd say. And then the next one is more the area that I've had experience working in. So when I joined as a young graduate trainee, it was more on the policy side in headquarters, and then now I'm representing human resources. Every agency in space needs this element too. It's not all just astronauts and rocket scientists. We need economists, we need business analysts, comms people, PR people, lawyers, finance, super important, especially when we're a taxpayer-funded organization. These are the people who help make the space agency work. So if any of you are not here studying STEM subjects, don't worry, there's definitely a place for you at the European Space Agency. So what are we looking for in terms of good candidates? So as I mentioned, for nearly all of them, master's degree is a requirement, except for the internship program, and PhD for those who are considering the research fellowship. The one I'd highlight actually is the professional curiosity. So I don't think you necessarily need to have been dreaming of being an astronaut or an astronomer since you were a little kid to work at ESA. You will get that professional curiosity once you join the agency through osmosis, just walking down the corridors and seeing the cool missions, the models we have, and hearing the conversations in the coffee corner. You just need to be open to being curious, is what I would say. Languages, a quick mention on this. So we have 2 official languages at the agency, English and French. In reality, apart from our French Guiana site for the spaceport, English is the working language. And I'm from the north of England, so I barely speak English, so I think all of you will be perfectly fine working at ESA, especially with this multicultural attitude where we have people from all of these member states represented, all the flags you see here. It's really the best part for me about working at ESA. And that's linked to the diverse pool of talent. We have people with all kinds of skills. No matter what your study is or your interest or your passion, there's a place for you to be at ESA and to be valued. And then, yeah, I mean, I've talked a bit about the passion, enthusiasm with the curiosity, but the relevant experience. For the entry-level programs, I want to say that for the YGT and the internships, these are not positions that are entry-level, require 10 years of experience. It's really, they exist to give you your first chance to get some space experience on your CV. When we're talking about relevant experience for the entry-level programs, it might be some of the projects you did at university, or maybe even some small internships that you've done. But my biggest tip would be, if you've got any way to get space on your CV, try it. Even if it's just mentioning you're an amateur astronomer, or you like sci-fi movies or something. It's a nice talking point in a potential interview. And of course, team spirit. When you're working for somewhere like ESA, some of the missions we have decades long in development. You really need a team spirit when you've got this kind of long-term goal. And so it's really a key part of working at ESA. Very different from, I won't name the names of the companies, but when I worked in finance, in investment banking, not so much of a team spirit, I have to say. When I came to ESA, I was really shocked in a great way that it's normal for people to be collaborative, nice, working in a team environment. So it's a really big part. You have to be a team player to work at ESA. So what can we offer you if you do come? So I would say the competitive and attractive salary conditions, leading on from talking about finance, even from that sector, I'd say ESA is attractive, especially on the young graduate trainee position, let's say, our flagship program. Emils might talk a bit more about what it's like to be a YGT, but I think in the Netherlands right now, where most of our YGTs are, with expatriate allowance, I think you're looking at a net salary of somewhere about 3,300, 3,500, which is a really nice post-masters. I like to think of it as a well-paid Erasmus at the end of your masters, to go to another country and really learn. So we are attractive on that side, but much more than just the salary side, I'd say, as I mentioned, to work on inspiring projects and missions. Even, like, I think back to myself, when I was a YGT, I helped to work on designing the astronaut selection that we did in 2021. And now we're seeing the astronauts just a few weeks ago pass the kind of graduation ceremony. And even if my role was such a tiny part of that, you do feel a bit of pride of working on that. And that happens everywhere at the agency. The learning and development opportunities, if you're an intern or a YGT or a research fellow, you're going to be learning on the job from experts in some of the best facilities in the world. It's quite clear the benefits there. I touched upon the multicultural environment a bit with the languages and the diversity of talent, but that's really a big factor. And then let's not forget the things that are outside of work as well. Let's talk about STech, for example. We have on site a golf course, tennis clubs, football fields, a bar, swimming pool, sauna, there's a beach nearby. I know it's a Dutch beach, but for a few days a year you can get some nice suntan. But there's also lots of active social and sports clubs too. It really feels like a family, and this is also replicated across our other sites, just in different areas too. And I would just end as well. This is one of my other key tips. I've got on here a lot of kind of buzzwords, let's say, and usually I would say it's just kind of the marketing words that every company comes up with. But they do matter at ESA, and it's linked to our behavioral competencies that we have, that we kind of grade people on when they are applying. We do look for people who are open, who can learn, be proactive, curious. So even if it is a little bit of a cheesy slide, it's just to prompt and remind you that when you're applying to ESA, and if you got through to an interview stage, really do look at the behavioral competencies that we list in every vacancy notice, because we're looking for some of these words, even if it's just as a prompt to then tick and grade you on. It's really important. Last one, what not to do when applying. So this is, you won't be able to see exactly what the text is here, but I can read out what it is, and let's see if you can guess where I'm going with this. So this is in one of our application forms from just a few weeks ago. And the question was, what are your goals and expectations for this internship? And the candidate answered, certainly, if you're applying for a job position at the European Space Agency and they're asking about your goals and expectations, you can respond with something like this. So I don't mind using generative AI if you're going to be applying, but at least delete the first part. But on a more serious note, I think when it comes to these kind of questions about passion and enthusiasm and expectations, we're not just like any other place to work. When I was working in investment banking, for example, when I was doing my cover letters, it really was Control F, find, replace. I've always dreamed of working at Deutsche Bank, whatever, something like this. Doesn't work at ESA. We do notice it. It's very different to work at a space agency, and we can really see your enthusiasm come over in your cover letter. Doesn't take too much time to write it yourself. So also doesn't take too much time to use a nice prompt for this, but we do pay attention, and we have some little background techniques to work out if you have been using it, even if you do delete the first section. So that would be my tip on what not to do. So I'll end my presentation there, but I think we have time for one or two questions, and then maybe after some more if you have when we're on stage together. But is there any immediate questions maybe?
Right. Thank you, Andrew. First of all, I think Andrew deserves a good clap of applause. Thank you. Very good and informative and rich in content and very inspiring. And I think with all the benefits that you've just advertised, I think you've sold European Space Agency as a potential working place. But now on the serious side, yes, are there any immediate questions from the audience? I have one in Slido, but I'll keep that for later. but anyhow, I will ask, of course, with all the opportunities you just presented, I would assume you get applications from all the countries present in the family of the European Space Agency. And of course, since we are in Latvia today, we are interested on what is the current, let's say, success rate of the Latvian citizens in securing both internship positions as well as maybe permanent vacancies at ESA. And how does it compare with other Baltic states?
Yeah, sure.
I'll give you a mic.
Great. Well, this is partly the reason why I'm actually here today. Just so you're aware, since Latvia did become an associate member state, we don't actually have any permanent Latvian staff members yet. And we're trying to find some to join the agency. One of the pipelines that we do have is the Young Graduate Trainee Program. It's very common for our young graduate trainees to follow the path I did, for example, and become a staff member at the end of it. So we do have, for example, you'll hear from Emils about the representation amongst the entry-level programs. And in terms of the applications when it comes to the other Baltic states, Latvia doesn't fare too badly, actually. But what we're really looking for, and why I'm here to answer any of your questions, is the next stage. We get you to apply. We want to make sure your application's as strong as possible so that you can then be successful. And I think I want to hear from Emils about his experience of the application process, what he think might have worked as well. because the entry-level programs are going to be the real pipeline that we have for increasing the permanent representation at ESA.
I guess that's within the Latvians, you know.
Yeah.
We just have to get it out and
Yes.
put it in the applications and
Exactly.
and state it.
Yeah.
And very good. I hope you take all these tips and tricks and you take notes and will bring them with you and reflect upon and then turn into actions after this event. One more question. Like generally, I read an interview with Gertrude. It was very inspiring. It was really interesting to read. And she mentioned that actually there is a change of generations going on in ESA. Mm-hmm. Is it so? And how would you characterize the current demand for staff at ESA?
Yes, that's a really good point. And I mean, there's two ways of looking at it. The first way of looking at it is we have a big retirement wave at ESA right now. So because it's such a great place to work, people joined in the 80s and 90s and they stayed their whole career. Now it's time for them to go on retirement. And now the corollary of that is there's also a big recruitment wave coming. So I think in the past few years, going forward to the next 5 years, pretty much half of the entire agency is retiring in this period. So it's actually the best time ever to be, first of all, on the entry-level programs, because in the next few years, there's going to be more opportunities than ever before to become permanent staff members. But even for those of you who have a few years of professional experience, there's going to be hundreds and hundreds of vacancies every year, all advertised on the jobs.esa.int portal. But indeed, it's never really been a better time to apply than right now. Yep.
So the right, you confirm. Very good. And I think, Andrew, from my experience with European Space Agency over many years, I think you are a true representative of what ESA is about, and people who work at ESA, that has been my experience as well. Very open, very collaborative, and of course, deep down, it's all about super high professionality and deep knowledge on the subjects. But it feels like it's a very great place to work. And I've noticed that people who enter ESA, they leave ESA when there is a time to retire.
Yeah,
so it's like the Japanese corporation.
In
a good sense, Japanese
yes.
culture, right?
I used to work for one of those in the past, and I can confirm it's similar to that.
Well, thank you, Andrew, very much, and we'll see you back on the stage at the end of all the presentations. But we already made a nice bridge to the next presentation, and I have a pleasure to invite on the stage a Latvian, Emils Senkans, and Emils is a trainee, as it was mentioned already for several times, at the Young Graduate Trainee Program. And I think you have, Emils, a fascinating story and personal experience to share with the audience. So, and please think about the questions. Yes, use most of the time we have today. Emils, floor is yours.
Thank you. So yeah, as mentioned, my name is Emils Senkans. I'm currently a young graduate trainee at ESA, at ESTEC. And I'll tell you about my personal experience in this presentation today. So, a little bit of background about me, my education, so how did I get there? I went to Florida Institute of Technology for my bachelor's in aerospace engineering. I graduated in 2019, and then I got a chance, being at the right spot at the right time, to do my master's there as well in flight test engineering, means testing aircraft pretty much and certifying that. And yes, so that's my education, and I knew that I need to get at least master's to be able to apply to ESA, because at NASA you could start at bachelor's maybe, but at ESA you want to have your master's there. On the bottom picture you can see a site from university. University is located right next to Kennedy Space Center, started by the same people who started NASA, so the spirit and connection with space was very strong there. And so that's what I got to experience during my studies. Then, the other experience that really helped me was that each of the summers for my bachelor's, I did 3 times internships at Aerodium Technologies, right back here in Latvia. As I was mostly between mechanical and aerospace on the duties that I was doing there, but that showed me what it means to work at the world-level company. Then, during my master's, I was hired as a graduate and teaching assistant because I got a scholarship during my master's, but because if I'm teaching, then they would be pretty much paying for my studies and giving me a salary to survive on. That was really good. And yeah, that experience was also quite great because I got to teach even some of my friends, let's say, who were a year younger than me, and then suddenly I'm their teacher, you know, for the lab session. Then, after graduating, for 1 year I returned to Latvia. I worked as a flight test engineer at Tarragon Aircraft, making ultralight aircraft that are also have their own records in the world. And then came the opportunity to get the young graduate position. And I'll mention later on my way how I got there that it wasn't the first time I applied that I got in. So for the young graduate trainee, I got hired in the human spaceflight safety engineering. It wasn't the first time that it was offered when I saw it, but reading through everything, I saw that the flight testing skills are exactly the mindset that they are looking for, even though the title might not, you know, mean the same. So, but during what I'm doing in the human spaceflight safety, in my section, we also do a couple of other things that I got a unique chance to be exposed to more than just the topic I was hired for. We also work on space debris mitigation and re-entry safety, and the big thing in the last year was put out the zero debris policy on that, and I just had a chance on getting on the details on daily work on what it means to do space debris mitigation, re-entry safety, making sure we have access to space, in short, in the long term. And then also in our section is planetary protection, but don't mix it up with planetary defense. We are not trying to deflect asteroids. We are trying to make sure we don't contaminate Moon or Mars, or when we bring samples back from those places that we don't contaminate Earth. And then one more highly important thing is the young professional satellite. I'll talk about it later. That's an extra stuff that I got to do because that's I'll mention about young professional satellite in a second. So yeah, that's my experience and my background. So now about the way on how I got to ESA itself. I applied right after finishing my master's in 2021 when we had just become a associated member state for 2 positions, but I got no interviews. So the story could have ended there, and that's it. I went to work as a flight test engineer here in Latvia and was working fine and didn't think about it much. Then the next year came, I saw some of my friends applying who were not that enthusiastic about space. And then I saw if they are applying and I don't use my second chance for the YGT, I'll never forgive myself for not even trying. So on the very last day of applications, right after lunch, I searched through the positions. Of course, I already had the account and everything there. Searched through the positions, found the 2 that makes most sense. Applied, got 1 interview, and that resulted in one offer. So of course, you don't say no to a space agency, right? And then, what made the difference? Difference in that year in between was, I would say, the astronaut selection process was one of the things, because in Latvia we organized a small group who were all applying together. I couldn't apply because I didn't have the experience yet. But I wanted to be part of the group, knowing who are as enthusiastic as me. So, and there we met one ex-employee of ESA, whom I had the chance to show my CV and ask, like, what's wrong? Why didn't they take me this year? He said, all the information is there, but the way you present it, you can't see that it's all there in the first 5 seconds. Because there will be many very strong applicants, but you need to stand out. So rearranging the information in the way that it matches exactly the job position is the way how you make it to the interview pile. And once you make it to the interview pile, you can talk to the person and get through much easier than getting through when they just look at your resume. And also applying for positions that best fit my experience. That also changed, because first year maybe I looked for something, it's an entry position, I'll apply for something that's more interesting, but not necessarily that it's 100% match for my skill set. I thought it's pretty close, but when everybody is very close, you need to be exactly on the point. So I changed that, and it worked out. So the useful experience that I could put in my motivation letter and also on the resume was during my master's I had the chance to work with the FAA, Federal Aviation Administration. We are doing consulting for them, a lot of testing for the urban aerial mobility vehicles, testing their safety, like the new regulations that need to be applied and so on. Then, of course, the aircraft testing and certification itself that I had done during masters. Then later working as a flight test engineer. And then in all of my education, I had a lots of hands-on experience in laboratories, building RC aircraft, building rocket models, and so on. And some of those skills, the most unexpected skills, came in very handy later on, that you think you would never use that again, but then it comes like as the main thing that you use. And yeah, just a couple of pictures, what it means of taking data in the aircraft. And enthusiasm about space exploration, that's a big thing. That's one of the two things that actually made me stand out, I would say, from the rest of the crowd when I talked later. What was the reason why they hired me, you know? Because everything else, yeah, was great, but enthusiasm, and because being so close to Kennedy Space Center, I used every single opportunity to view a rocket launch, meet an astronaut, go on a tour, whatever. So that experience, I knew NASA much better than I knew ESA, to be honest. But since the organizations operate in a similar manner, that helped me quite a lot during the interview, because I could freely talk about any topic that was brought up, because I was familiar with it already. And yeah, on the side, I have a private pilot's license, but that's nothing really to do with the professional stuff. That's more so I can understand both sides, the engineers and the pilots, since flight testing comes exactly in between. And you need to think about like the end user, the same in space. When you certify something for the International Space Station, you need to think about the end user as well. You can't just say, oh, like you'll have to use it this or that way, you know, without thinking if it's reasonable or not. Then, what do I do at ESA? A couple of pictures with my team. So I'm located at ESTEC, and I work in the Independent Safety Office. Independent Safety Office means we certify everything for human spaceflight. We certify everything that goes to the International Space Station, whether it's any experiment or PR item, or, for example, the flags you can see behind the two astronauts that were recently up. All of the flags were the items that I certified. Of course, many other experiments. So Europe operates the Columbus module on the International Space Station. All the experiments, maintenance, everything is certified by our office. If we say it's not safe to fly, it doesn't fly. That's the end of the story. But you always make sure that you can prove that it's safe enough and that you can fly. And also, as we are building the Lunar Gateway Station, we are also doing the certification of the station itself to make sure that it's safe to fly people there, safe to leave it for long time, and so on. And on the top left, there's a picture when NASA was visiting, because we are working almost on a daily basis with NASA, since they have a lot more people doing this stuff than my team on top right. Then on the bottom right, you can actually see John McFall, one of the recently selected astronauts. We are doing a unique program with him because he's a Paralympic champion, and we are trying to certify his prosthesis so he could be the first person in space wearing that. And yes, but mentioning the other things, so yeah, planetary protection. So the Mars sample return mission is a very big thing now, working together with NASA. We are making sure that we don't bring back anything unwanted outside of the sealed capsule. And that's quite a unique challenge, because you need to seal it outside and then bring it back. Just like the first time we are flying to the moon, we didn't know if we would bring back any germs from the moon, so people sat in the quarantine. Once we figured that out, we could lower the expectations, but for Mars we don't know that yet, so we still need to be very cautious. And then, yes, as I mentioned, for the space debris mitigation, the zero debris policy, that policy was made actually in a record time. So I managed to see that process, how we go from consulting with the industry, with the other experts, and then making that into a policy that's already applicable. And yeah, and there I've also had a chance to go through certification, making sure that satellites that we send up can comply with the policy, show they're reliable enough, they'll not blow in million pieces, or when the time comes, they can be taken down safely. And then the young professional satellite. So that's one big project that I want to mention, because that's entirely done by young professionals. So mostly young graduate trainees. They came together with an idea that we have such world-class facilities around us, why not use the experts and do like some project on our own? We were giving it the green light. We could use like 10% of our time. And we ended up building small experimental spacecraft that's gonna fly an Ariane 6 maiden flight, hopefully already in June or July this year. We were given a very short time scale, which got extended because the flight got delayed, but that's normal in this industry. Nothing is on time and on budget. And so yeah, our idea is to record the key launch events and doing that with fully automated operations. And so what we are trying to do when the rocket takes off from Kourou, our satellite will detect actual launch because we are not allowed to send any signals during that phase. We have a wake-up system that detects launch, wakes up the satellite, because when the fairings, when the nose cone separates, we are trying to first of all record that to make sure that it works as they planned it to work, and then as the other payloads get deployed, we'll film those events, take pictures, take a couple of extra pictures from Earth, and then we have on the second orbit a chance to downlink everything back to Earth. And what's interesting, one of the most powerful ground stations on our path is actually Ventspils. So it's right here, and we will most likely be using that as one of the stations in the network. But that's really nice to see that Latvia will also have, some part in the first launch of the new rocket, plus the satellite I had a chance to work on. And yes, and then after that, it just comes back in the atmosphere, burns up, and we never see it again. So what I was doing there, we were designing, building. I was working as a thermal engineer, so we were responsible for thermal. And that was, for the shiny part, you see multi-layer insulation. I was building that from scratch, so the skills I acquired building radio-controlled aircraft became essential on building this, because this is more art than actual science, I would say. There is science behind it, but it's art on how to actually wrap it around the structures and make sure it all works. And we did such a good job that actually all of our team got awarded by the Director General last year for the Teamwork Excellence Award, because we had organized ourselves in such a well way, it was recognized on ESA level that usually like big satellite missions get this recognition, and we managed to get it as just like young graduate trainees. So yeah, the thermal vacuum test that we did, everything else, and just a lot of fun. Of course, a lot of time, sweat, and tears as well, but you can't go without that. And then, how you can get to ESA. So a few tips from my side, that you need to follow the job postings because you never know when the most interesting thing will show up. Then that you need to find the positions that match your skills just the best. That it's not, something interesting, I don't know if I can do it, but find something that you fulfill all the criteria, or at least most of it. Then, of course, you need to create an account. But once you have the account, applying for new positions becomes super easy. Just the first time creating that account takes time. That's what I still remember from making the account, more than 3 years ago. So create it earlier rather than sooner. Then ideally talk to somebody who has worked there. I've actually been reached out by some applicants from other European countries on LinkedIn asking, hey, how is it working at this position? Like, what should I take into account when applying? And I'm happy, to reply. That's why I'm also here. This is your chance to talk to somebody who has worked there. Because that was the thing that helped me talking to the previous employee of ESA, right? Then all you have to do is apply after that. It's pretty easy. And one thing to mention, even astronauts will apply multiple times. Right? So if it doesn't work out the first time, apply again and again. One time it will work out. And yeah, just a couple of pictures. And comparing to Andrew, I had a chance to go to French Guiana, see the Space Center and everything. It's truly amazing. And of course, the most amazing part is seeing the Latvian flag being at the front of the flags right next to the rocket, so you can take a unique picture like that. And yeah, and then on the bottom, you can see in one of the test facilities on the bottom left, there is just many of the young graduate trainees all together in the LEAF acoustic test facility. That's also one of the many unique, huge test facilities that we have on the site. That's just casual business, I would say. And then some of the satellite team in the middle, and then we are investigating some failures on the top. So, yes, continuing. Then what will I do after ESA? Because my internship or traineeship ends at the end of August this year. So my current plan is moving back to Latvia, and I'm prepared to work in space aviation or defense industries. I've spent close to 8 years abroad. It's time to bring the skill set back and increase what we can do here. So how IGT helped me achieve all of this? So I got a really good insight of what ESA offers, understand how European space industry works, because I had only exposure previously to the American one during my studies. Then I now have a huge network of space professionals from all the young graduate trainees, all the other people I've worked with, because previously my network was mostly in the US. And then I got hands-on experience in working in these labs when we are working on our satellite. And yeah, just like going through all the steps, what it takes. And I'm quite better now, understand how ESA industrial relations work, what part is ESA responsible for, what part is the industry responsible for, and how you can get in touch and so on, which will be useful later. So yeah, during the Young Professional Satellite, I had a chance to go through the whole process of designing, building, testing, and soon, hopefully, launching the satellite, which normally takes, many years or sometimes even decades. But I got to see that here, in just a couple of years. And then I got to work with colleagues from other space agencies. Every week I talk with people from NASA, from JAXA, from Canadian Space Agency. JAXA is Japanese Space Agency, if somebody doesn't know. And then on the bottom you can see one of our, again, test centers for electromagnetic waves during the open day when we had some visiting vehicles there, let's call it that. And yeah, if you have any questions, this is the end of my presentation, and thank you for listening.
Wow, Emil. Thank you so much. You are like the bomb of energy on the stage, in a good sense. And I think you are manifesting some of the characteristics that also Andrew mentioned. What ESA is seeking for: open, curious, enthusiastic, but deep down also professional. And I was wondering if I may ask you, how old are you? Because your experience is so extensive.
I'm 28.
28. It feels like you can retire. Sorry, I'm joking. Take it as a compliment from my side. Are there any immediate questions from the audience? And there are Slido questions, so we will be dissecting you in the conversation afterwards. Right. But I have one question, and it came maybe a bit of as a surprise, because looking at your professional track and how you've gone, different educational establishments that you have completed and different countries where you have studied, and now being a young graduate trainee at ESA. It's a bit of surprising to hear that you're coming back to Latvia. Why?
It's so great to live here. We are actually doing quite a lot of stuff for ESA as well. I know a few companies. I have now finally built a big enough network in Latvia that I believe everything is possible here, and I prefer living here than somewhere else. So why not?
It sounds like music to my ears, because I think this is exactly that's another way how to look at ESA, is that you gain the first-hand experience, but then you bring back that knowledge that you collect all over the world, working in different projects, and still being here, you can continue with ESA and bring back benefits to your own country.
Yeah, of course. That's what the young graduate trainee is all about, to prepare us for work, either mostly in the industry or, staying at ESA, but in industry, working with ESA anyway, because everybody ends up there.
Mm. So, and from what you've just mentioned in your presentation, so you're looking more towards the work in the private sector, for the companies, or the academic research sector, or you have not defined it yet?
We'll see. Opportunity will come and I'll take it. I've talked with several people in many of these aspects that you mentioned, and what works out, in September, I'll post on my LinkedIn.
Great. Wonderful. And I hope that those who will be watching the record of this event today might also see somebody who can be recruited and to take this opportunity. Emil, thank you for now. I will see you back on the stage. stage.
Thank you.
It was great, and thank you for the positive energy you are convening to the audience. Yes, thank you. With some thoughts, and we will now go to our third. We will continue with our third presentation, and yeah, with the presentation from the neighboring country, I would like to put it like that. Even though Gertrude is working full-time for the European Space Agency, I still regard you as our neighbor coming from Estonia firsthand. But I have a pleasure to have a female space engineer on the stage today. So Gertrude Talvik from Estonia, who works now for the European Space Agency, but you will reveal your professional path in ESA before and what are you doing now there. Gertrude,
Perfect.
please.
Thank you. Right, so indeed I'm from Estonia. I'm the closest thing they could find to a Latvian working full-time at ESA. That's why I'm here. And a correction as well, my background is actually from sciences, which is, let's say, a little bit less common at ESA, but now I don't know anymore what I am, really. It's been 8 years at ESA, almost 8 years. And it's been quite a path, and I'll try to go through that. So you got a very good presentation on the opportunities and how to get access to those through Andrew, and a very good presentation on the experience of the YGT. So I'll try to tell you the things that you cannot quote me on later. I'll interpret some of how it feels like to be at ESA and how to have a career at ESA. I know it's being recorded, but I'm just going to claim it's deep AI or something. It wasn't me. Right, so if I were to explain or describe my career in one word or in one picture, it would be something like this. So this is one of the most famous single point of failures in space missions history. So this is the Challenger disaster. Obviously, it was now we know it was the O-rings as a single point of failure, labeled as criticality 1 item by NASA. And those got brittle before the launch due to the low temperatures, and we lost 7 crew members. This is kind of my career at ESA, in a way. The reason why I'm at ESA is because I always wanted to be an astronaut. There's a lot of us at ESA who wanted to be an astronaut. And the logic was that if I get my foot in the door, if I get closer to where the action happens, I will be one. But as Andrew mentioned some weeks ago, they had their graduation. Instead of that, I'm here in Riga talking to you guys. So I clearly didn't make it. But I promise you the story gets a bit more positive as I continue. So how did it all start? A very long time ago, I was actually working, studying at Cape Town University. Before that, I finished high school quite early. I did last few years in 1 year, and then took a one-way ticket to Australia. I was done with studying, wanted to do something else, ended up picking apples for a year in Australia. Why I mention it here, it becomes relevant later on, believe me. I went on to study at the University of Cape Town, where I got my master's degree in biochemistry, biotechnology, and Mandarin. And I also applied twice. So some of the stories, the parallels are quite striking, actually, with Emil's, because I applied in 2015, and I applied for something that I wanted to do. It looked like super interesting. And back in the day, the application process was even longer. You basically send in your application and into a black hole, and you never hear back. You don't get a letter of rejection. You don't get any notification of any kind. You just wait for months, and you never hear anything. I think it's better now. I think you actually get notified when you don't get the position. But that can be quite demoralizing. But very similar message to Emil's, that you have to try again. In some ways, the first try is kind of like a test of motivation. I know very, very few people, if any, who've actually gotten through the first time trying. And I don't know anyone who applied once, got to the interview, and got the position throughout any of these opportunities. So you just got to keep on trying. And then 2016, again, very similar to Emil's. Last hour of the application deadline, I was sure I'm not going to get it this time either. But then I was like, I'm going to regret it if I don't try. And this time I went for a position that was better suited to my background. And in the end, here I am. I actually already managed to enroll to a PhD position, simply because the application time at the time was something like 9 months. So I was still waiting to hear back, but I got notified of the YGT offer, and I dropped the PhD like a hot potato and took a plane to the Netherlands to ESTEC. And then I was a YGT for about a year and 4 months. I got extended after a year, and then a staff position came out. I applied for it, and now I'm staff since October 2018. So how the hell did I get accepted to ESA? So in 2017, so I applied 2016, so 2017 cycle, there were over 4,000 YGT applications for about 100 positions. Both of these numbers have increased now. There's more positions than there's for sure more applications coming in. So the chances are pretty low, but never actually tell yourself the odds. I try to tell it to myself as well, especially since I had quite an odd mix of science disciplines from an African university of all places. So my kind of strategy going in was that if I get through the first round, and I get to actually talk to someone, I might make my way into the actual position. I might be able to talk my way in, basically. And this is pretty much how it went. The interview experience was interesting because now I know who I was up against at the time. In the last round, it was me versus a French aerospace engineer with a very classical path of engineering from very top universities in France. On paper, she was a better candidate, but in person, there were things that I managed to say or do in the interview that actually convinced the panel, but I did pay for it later on, and I'll show you how. But I think the main message here is that if you're gonna apply to ESA, you're about to apply to a highly competitive environment. You can expect most people to have very good grades. They're very qualified academically. The experience in international environments, they can speak multiple languages. There's also some voluntary or extracurricular work involved. And also things like pilot's licenses. I mean, between us in the hour here, between me and Emils, we can tick most of these boxes. I can also fly a plane. This is a pure coincidence. So, as I said, the first application is really a test of motivation. You shouldn't give up after that. It's going to be a rejection, most likely. It was for us. And what experience actually sets you apart? So, in my case, it came down to the picking apples in Australia. Later, talking to my mentor, when I got the YGT position, we had a chat about my CV. And the apple picking thing, the gap year in Australia, I didn't really know if to leave it in or not, or what to do with that time, so I just put it in there. I needed to explain what did I do for a year. And my mentor said that that caught his eye. That this is very interesting, a 17-year-old taking a one-way ticket to Australia, picking apples, 14 hours a day under apple trees, under 40-degree heat. So surely this person can work for 14 hours in an air-conditioned office. So he saw some qualities there just by the fact that I took upon myself to have this experience in my life. And it actually came up as one of the positive marks in my CV. So just a moment of thought if you're going through your CV and thinking, okay, what experience should I keep in? What is useful, what is not? And then finally, nowadays, I'm sometimes on the other side of the table. So I've been interviewing also staff and contractors for ESA, and it's an interesting experience. So the main objective being on the other side is really making the person in front of you comfortable enough to actually expose themselves and expose their main qualities in a certain way. But there is always an independent variable. There is always a thing that you, as an applicant, cannot control. The ultimate outcome is really not in your control, and it can be anything. So if you don't get through the last round and the interview, then really it's not all you. There's things happening in the panel, there's conversations that we're having, it's a hot day, whatever the case may be. There's things that are simply not in your control. So if you're not successful, then simply just try again and don't get demoralized. So now that you're through the onboarding, as I mentioned, in my case, I wasn't the strongest applicant on paper. So what happened after? I came from a science background into an engineering position. And my mentor at the time then gave me this book, Space Mission Analysis and Design. It's a 1,100-page textbook, and he gave me the weekend plus Friday to go through it. I made it through about 700 pages, and he quizzed me on Monday. Luckily, I passed, and then he sort of involved me properly in the work. Now, these are the parts you cannot quote me on. You can take pictures. I'll deny that I wrote this down. There are 3 different kinds of YGT experiences: the good, the bad, and the ugly. In other words, you might be, and there's no way of actually distinguishing between them by reading from the job descriptions. So some of them are things like shadow engineering. There's something that is being done already. You kind of supplement or redo the work. In some cases, you find some useful things and you actually contribute to the overall activity. This is quite a good case. There's also cases where you're left to your own devices. You're kind of employed into a position and you kind of have to make your way through it. So you might not be given very concrete tasks. You somehow end up in a team. And in this case, I really recommend, if this really happens, there's no way of knowing it beforehand. In this case, just ask everyone how you can be useful. Go to your team members, ask for things to do. How can you be useful in any way, shape, or form? And that can then progress into a more meaningful work later on. And then the ugly, this was my case, where actually the team didn't have enough resources to do all the work they had to do, so they pushed some of that on me along with the responsibilities. This is not what the YGT should be, but it really was in my case. So I didn't have that carefree experience of a YGT. It was months of studying and quite hard work from the get-go. But on the flip side, I think it's part of the reason why I managed to secure the staff position later on. For staff, there's only one kind of experience, the busy. You will be completely overwhelmed. Everyone works at about 120% at ESA, but it's really worth it. And obviously, any sort of onboarding is commensurate to the entry level. As I mentioned in my case, I still have nightmares about that textbook. Now, working at ESA, this is something that's been mentioned already once you get in. This is a picture I like to show because I think it's quite impressive. So ESTEC is the site I'm at as well. This is the large space simulator when we simulate the space environment. It's really quite impressive because we can simulate the solar constant hitting the upper atmosphere. That's like 1,200 watts per square meter. And we do it through these xenon lamps. You don't see them here, but they basically, they're in that hole, and they flow towards these mirrors. And we can adjust these mirrors and target these towards a spacecraft to simulate up to 12 times the solar constant. So for spacecraft really traveling close to the sun. This here is Bepi Colombo going to Mercury, and this, just to give you an idea of the scale, this thing is about 3 meters across. So the whole thing is massive. It has shrouds in the walls simulating the coldness of space through pumping liquid nitrogen through them. And we have it on site, and we pump it into near perfect vacuum. And back in the day when ESTEC was founded, you see it's kind of in the middle of nowhere. It didn't have a lot of residential areas around. It's for a reason, because back in the day when we put the sun on, the lights would flicker in the nearby villages. That's how much the energy was pulled off the grid. Nowadays, obviously, it's a little bit different, much more secure, but if you work at ESTEC, you get a chance to actually see something like this, which is very unique. Obviously, other things, access to information and expertise. There used to be a thing called the Astronaut Alert. Obviously, most of them are at the Astronaut Center in Cologne, but at ESTEC, surely if you join, you'll join one of these WhatsApp groups. And there's a thing called Astronaut Alert. When anyone spots an astronaut at ESTEC, they send a message, and you get these group of zombies then traveling towards that elusive astronaut if sighted. There's a bunch of internal trainings. So once you're in, you can, the sheer access to information and professional development opportunities is quite amazing. It's purely international environment, and as mentioned, the working conditions are really great. So, all in all, how would I sort of summarize my ESA career? I like to show this picture. This is part of our sort of exploration strategy, kind of fitting what NASA is doing, the Moon to Mars approach, to have some sort of a base on the Moon and a stopping point to propel people further towards Mars. And it's nice because it's sort of straight lines and nice orbits and things moving in a linear direction or in a calculated curve. But actually, if I were to show you the actual orbit of Gateway, it looks more like this. This is the near rectilinear halo orbit. Not a straight line at all. And going to the lunar orbit, we actually have to go further to the other side from the Earth. So this is a bit like this. This is me picking apples in Australia that actually got me ultimately working at ESA. And at the time, I would have never guessed it would have any sort of significance in my career, but it does. So in the end, there are no single point failures when it comes to a career. And in worst case, you can always become a bus driver. I'll leave my email here as well, in case you really want to talk to me about something or look for more motivation or inspiration.
Gertrude, thank you so much. And I would not just refer to your email, but I would encourage everyone to take this opportunity while you are here, because as we talked before, you have to leave early tomorrow morning. So Gertrude is not staying long in Latvia this time, so there is an opportunity for you to talk tonight, just right after the event, this afternoon, late afternoon. But are there any immediate questions to Gertrude? Well, I have one. Well, first of all, I would like to thank you for a very honest presentation. As it's always like that, there are, I mean, the bright sides and less bright sides in our career paths and also personal and professional lives. So I think, yes, it was very interesting to hear the very honest story. I was wondering, Andrew said you have to mention space in your CV. You mentioned apples. I have sheep herding in my CV. I was wondering if that would help. Sheep herding in Bulgaria. But to the serious side, does being from Estonia has contributed to advancing Estonian industry or initiatives within ESA? As you were working with new states.
Yeah, indeed. When I started as a YGT, one of my countries was Estonia, and I was supporting Estonian industry. But as I progressed towards staff, they said it's a bit too close to home, my work activities. So they separated me from Estonian activities. But I still kept a close contact with Estonian industry and the delegation. And now, when I joined, I was the second Estonian to join ESA. Now there's 7 of us.
Okay.
Something like that.
Again,
so
those Estonians. We have to catch up.
But you just need one, let's say, staff member to get in, and then I think it's.
And then it goes.
And then it goes.
Okay, so that we need one. Emils, you are returning back to Latvia. We're very thankful for that. But we need the next one in the line. So hopefully, somebody from those who are in the hall will do that. Yes. Well, I think we will now jump to the joint conversation with the 3 of you. Once again, thanks for the wonderful presentation and the story. But I will invite you on the stage. We will rearrange the stage very quickly. We will just move the table on the side, and we will take chairs from the hall and be back on the stage. And you can still use Slido to submit the questions. There are 6 of them waiting. I have a long list of questions on my side, but it's all about you, not about me and my questions. So I encourage you to send questions and you can also indicate to whom the question is addressed from the speakers. So please, I will be sitting on the side and we will be sharing the microphone. Maybe I'll start with a more general question, and that will go first to Andrew. And maybe even to Gertrude, since both of you are employed by ESA full time. So are there any myths or stereotypes that you could challenge regarding the employment possibilities at ESA? Many aspects were already covered, but still, I would imagine there are some typical stereotypes that you would like to challenge.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak first from my own experience, but it's also something when speaking, let's say, after events like this in the corridors, having coffee or apéro, that I think the perception of ESA is that you have to be an astronaut or a rocket scientist to work here. And we do have those, but they're a very small part of the people who work at the agency. And so for myself, I came from, okay, I'd worked in finance and my educational background was political science. So nothing at all seemingly to do with space, right? And so for me, I think part of the myth is thinking, oh, I don't have a chance to work at the European Space Agency. As I went through in my presentation, no matter what your subject that you're studying or the kind of work experience you have, we have a role for you at ESA. We need all kinds of skills. So I would say that don't be put off if you have a kind of an elitist perception of ESA, that it's this unobtainable place to work. For sure, it's really cool when we see the astronauts in the coffee corner. I didn't know about this WhatsApp group, but I have seen our astronauts, you know, we actually have one Italian astronaut I saw in the coffee corner recently in headquarters, and it's just like, wow, it's really cool, like to see them. But most of the positions that you'll see at ESA are just like anywhere else, and so we want to try and dispel the myth that it's unobtainable.
It's not all about rocket science.
It is a bit, but
It's a bit.
as you mentioned, but not entirely.
But I was just curious, how many of those who are present in the audience are studying actually social sciences? Because primarily, of course, we associate the European Space Agency and the opportunities more related to STEM subjects and engineering or computer science. But are there any people who are studying social sciences, like economics, political science? Myself?
Yeah, myself, yeah.
Okay, Kaspars, that's a good sign. So we have more or less the hard part present, right? not so much the soft side, but still maybe the related question, and that could also be to Gertrude and to Andrew, both of you. Like, but are there any positions that are more competitive than others in terms of competition to get the job?
Well, I think the difficult answer to give first from the HR side before I pass to Gertrude is, say for the young graduate trainee program, which is happening right now. We have about 11,000 applications this year for 112 positions. So you can do the math quite simply there. But there are some positions that are much less applied to, talking less than 20 applications sometime. And there's some, this year we had one position which had the most ever applications in ESA history across every job. You know, it's close to 500. That's will change on a year-to-year basis. That position previously, last year, had maybe only 100 applications. So it's hard to say in particular. But that's why one of the things we did this year for both the internships and the YGTs was to expand. You can apply to 3 positions now. So you mentioned before, Emils, you applied to 2 when you were there, but we recognize that it changes on a year-to-year basis. So I would always say, try not to take the mentality of apply to the least apply to position, because you really won't know. And I have to admit the exact same situation as Gertrude and Emils. I applied in the last hour of the last day. Doesn't matter to your application if you do that, by the way. We review everything at the end. And I think half of our applications came on the final day, and over half of them came in the final hour. So Not the best practice, but I'd be a hypocrite if I said not to do that, because that's exactly what I did.
The student gene, right?
You
It's
can't lose
still
it.
here.
You can't lose it. It's
You
part
can't
of that.
lose it, yes.
So I wouldn't say
The
it's
last
necessary.
minute matters.
Exactly. So I wouldn't necessarily say it has a big impact on a year-to-year basis. But the one thing I would say is that when we're talking about the non-traditional space subjects, so it could be our communications team, the space economy team, the more political side, it's not the thing you associate with space immediately. So you might not get people who are applying, but then that's one thing I would say. Whereas, say, where you were mentioning the other applicant who had a French aerospace engineering background, it's very common. There's a high knowledge of ESA in this particular field. But the key thing is just to apply to the position that you think is relevant for you.
I think what I would take as really the key message from your input now is that space is really cross-disciplinary, right? And this is exactly what we do not have the first immediate association, but it's actually bringing all kinds of knowledge areas, domains, and sciences together. So there is space for everyone in the space, right? Gertrud, would you like to add anything to what Andrew said regarding myths and stereotypes?
Yeah, I think perhaps it's actually really hard to see from the vacancy itself or the trainee position when you read through it, what is it that you're actually going to be doing? And prepping for the interview, I remember I searched everything about ESA and I felt well prepared, understanding how ESA works. I had no clue. So there's some things that you only realize once you get in, and your job and your tasks and your positions start evolving as you get in as well. So it's really difficult beforehand to imagine what it is actually that you will be doing. And you see some vacancies are described as a technology engineer. Okay. It doesn't say much at the time, and you have no way of knowing if this is very competitive or not competitive. It's just really having a sanity check and looking at a good rationale, what fits your background best, and then just trying.
Okay, thank you. Before, Emils, we jump to you, one more question about the student programs in particular, and the success rate
Yep.
of ESA student programs. So not just competition in general, but are there any programs that are more difficult to succeed in, or what is the general success rate from the programs you presented, particularly for students?
In terms of success, do you mean?
Obviously, how many applications to what is being accepted? Okay. That's how I would interpret success rate.
Sure. Well, across all of them, let's say. The bad news to deliver is it's extremely competitive. Doesn't matter which one you apply to, and it's getting more competitive in the sense we get more applications. But at the same time, we are now having. I mean, this year was a record number of interns, for example. I think we have. There was about 160 positions, from which we had over 250 interns. So there are certain positions where multiple people will get hired on the same. That's very common for internships in particular. But it's leading a bit on to what both Emils and Gertrude said, is that take every opportunity that you're eligible to apply to any of the programs to apply. Because even if you're not successful, you can apply again, you get to know the process better. So that's why for the bachelor students here, or the high school students who are about to be bachelor, apply. You might not be the strongest candidate. You're going up against some master's level students. You might not get it. But keep applying and maximize your chances that way. Because if you think about it, you have, maybe 4, 5, 6 different opportunities to apply for an internship. All of a sudden, the probability looks a lot kinder than the headline figure of tens of thousands of applications. So it's and it's very common for our interns to apply multiple times. Yeah.
I was just wondering whether you get, when you are rejected, for example, which is obviously something that you would expect from what I gather from your presentations, and that's normal. I mean, that is a normal process because that is about testing persistency and real motivation as one approach. But do you get any justification for the decision? Do you get any hint why were you rejected?
So, like in terms of feedback, yes. I mean, it depends. I can tell you, I was doing this yesterday for one of the YGT positions that I was on the board for the interviews. Usually that kind of personal feedback will come through two ways. One, if you get through to a final round interview, for sure we will always give you the feedback related to that. But secondly, we do have this kind of seemingly corporate faceless email address that's about contact HR. People read that. My colleagues read it, I read it. And if a candidate ever asks for feedback, we are able to give individualized feedback. We just don't, as a habit, for example, give individualized feedback for 11,000 applications.
Yeah, I can imagine.
However, if you do ask us, we do have a team of dozens of colleagues who do support with giving that feedback. So that's probably a good thing to, if you're not successful, ask why. You will get a response, and usually it doesn't mean you're a bad candidate. There's a bit of a luck lottery when we have only, a couple of hundred positions and thousands of applications. So sometimes the feedback might be keep doing what you're doing. It's actually really good, which was the feedback I gave yesterday to a candidate who didn't make it. And last week I actually interviewed another candidate who last year they didn't get the position. They were the backup candidate. This year they did get the position, and they said part of that was the feedback we gave at the end of the interview to say focus on learning a bit more about this technical competency or something like this. So it's more automatic later in the process, but we're always open to providing feedback if people ask.
That's a very valuable hint for everyone is really to ask why.
And also,
I think especially if you, do not give up and you want to continue, and that one sentence or two sentences might be of great value.
And ask if you do get to an interview or you know someone working in the area who reviewed your application, ask them directly. It's very easy. First name dot last name at esa.int. You'll be able to find the email address even if it's not delivered. Sure, our colleagues will love that little tip, but it's what I did, and now my inbox is completely flooded because of that. But it's a good thing because it's one of the other ways to get direct feedback. Go on LinkedIn, go on whichever way you can.
I think that is also a sign of professionality on the side of human resources management, right?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
This policy. Emils, to you now. The questions. There are a couple of questions to you, but one is, I think, particularly interesting. Why were you so much more passionate about working in ESA rather than NASA?
Because I could. For NASA, you need to be a U.S. citizen. As simple as that. That's it. That's a national agency. It's like one of the smaller agencies that builds up ESA, even though we're a little bit smaller in general. But first time I could apply was when Latvia became associated member state. And that happened just a few months before my graduation with master's. So it was pretty clear to me that the only way is applying to ESA, because I know like a lot of my friends applied to NASA because they were US citizens, of course. But for me, the only path was ESA or nothing, pretty much, or yeah.
Thank you for the very straightforward answer. Feels like I have no more questions to you. Right, Emils, but still, even though you said, so you're back to Latvia and probably will be seeking for job opportunities here, do you speculate that one day you could return to ESA for some permanent position? And then there is a question to ESA, whether it's possible to work remotely in ESA.
So one day, who knows? I never say no, because a lot of things that have happened in the recent past years, if I planned them, it wouldn't have worked out that way.
Okay. The human plans, the God laughs, right?
Exactly, so you need to always stay open, because I had already pretty much settled back in Latvia when I applied the second time, just for fun, pretty much, right? And look, everything changed once again, so always need to be open for positions and opportunities, that come your way. Because if you're closed, you'll miss them. Like right now, like if you don't apply, you are already not hired. But if you apply, you have the chance.
Action. That's what's needed, right? So how about this possibility to work remotely? Are there remote jobs in ESA?
Yeah, I mean, we don't do 100% remote, that I want to say up front. However, we do have quite a flexible working policy that I even use myself. Every week I work half the time in headquarters in Paris and half the time I work in ESTEC. I travel every week. And that's partly because we allow up to 9 days of working every month outside of your home country that you're working in. So for me, that's the Netherlands, but I spend 9 days every month in Paris. And one of the other things to say, for example, like Emil's a good example right now that, okay, he's over here, he's going to hopefully benefit the next few days of maybe some teleworking, unless you've taken some holiday. You can work remotely when you get these kind of events too. And then on top of that, we do offer a more generous home working policy in the same member state that you're working for. So if you're in the Netherlands, you can work more than 9 days at home. But I think it's really linked to a lot of the kind of, let's say, the legal taxation reasons why you can't just be in Hawaii dialing in. It'd be very nice. I do know some friends in different areas where that is a possibility. But actually, if you're on one of the entry-level programs, I'd encourage you to try and be on site as much as you can. I actually joined ESA during COVID, and at some point you get sick of your little office space in your home place. And being on site at a place like S-Tech or any of the establishments really we have, they're all excellent. There's a nice social element to it as well. So we are flexible. I'd say most of my colleagues come in 2 or 3 days a week to the office, and then the other 2 or 3 days, it's either they might be in their home country or working ahead of a weekend vacation, or they're just working from home. It's quite flexible. Yeah.
Right. Now talking a bit more about the working routines. One is related to the location, geographic location, but then the other question comes, and that's an interesting one, is about multitasking while being in a permanent position at ESA. And I'm looking at you, Gertrude, so probably you are the one to answer. So is one person working on one project or multiple projects at the same time? And how often one person change project?
Okay, multiple at the same time, first of all. Especially if I give an example of our technical directorate, it effectively works like this. We have a bunch of engineers deployed through different domains in our technical directorate. And the projects, so let's say the large missions, employ these effectively buy their time to support certain projects. In some cases, you can have one engineer that is supporting 30 different contracts running at ESA within his domain. So it's constantly switching through reviewing technical documents from actually very different contracts and activities. And that's the tech directorate. But if you go outside of the tech directorate, let's say mostly if you're in a project team working on a specific mission, that's where you can be, as Andrew said before, for 10, 15, 20 years over the course of the development, working on a very specific mission throughout your career. But this happens normally quite at a senior stage at ESA, when you're quite late in your career. In the beginning, you're juggling everything. That's for sure.
Yes, and as you say, you work 120% instead of 100%. That's what the feeling I've got when working with contracts with European Space Agency. It felt like people are really working really hard, and they have multiple projects, either to oversee or to run at the same time, and multiple jobs to do at the same time. Attend the meetings, review the documents, write reports, etc., etc., etc.
And on the flexibility, I must say, when I joined ESA 8 years ago, I came from a university background. I was a research assistant at the time, and a few weeks in, I asked my mentor, can I do some remote work? I was quite introverted. I didn't want to go to the office that much, and he said, absolutely no. We're now at the point where I maybe happen to be in the office a few times a month, maybe. I also travel to Estonia, I telework from Estonia, and it's really becoming very flexible, the working time. Also, the time-wise, we don't have, you basically need to complete your work between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. So it's becoming a very modern institution compared to 8 years ago when I started. It was very boxed in. You had to be at the office at a certain time every single day.
Right, and I guess really the pandemic years, they introduced a lot of changes the way we work, and that's the new normal, and probably to stay for quite some time. Well, there is a light question that probably is to both of you, Emils and Gertrud. Is pilot license a must-have to be able to compete with other candidates?
Absolutely not, because when I got hired, I actually didn't have the license yet. I was in the process of getting it, and then I got a notification pretty much that I have been accepted, and I knew, okay, before I moved to the Netherlands, I got a few months to finish up my license. So it wasn't even it wasn't even on my application that I have one. So definitely not. It's more something I wanted to do once I had the first chance to do it.
Yeah. But still, I would say, to me, it looks like a bit of a pattern listening to you, or maybe it's just a coincidence to have similar people on the kind of on the stage today. But I think the more diverse your portfolio is, I mean, your professional portfolio skills, or things you've done in your life, the more attractive or interesting you are as a personality, and you trigger this curiosity for the potential employer is like, oh, there is something interesting, right? There is a wonderful saying about hire not for skills but hire for attitude, and very much about having the license, pilot license, having traveled all over the world, or picking apples in Australia. It tells a lot about the personality, right?
I must say that you do see within ESA, I mean, it kind of filters for people with certain interests. So it's a coincidence that we're both here now on the stage, but if you go inside of ESA, you start seeing these patterns. People interested in aerospace and space, they're naturally interested in similar kind of stuff. So within ESA, I think we have a disproportionate amount of pilots. It's really incredible. And there's a flying club as well. So if you do come to ESA, get a pilot's license, you can there's a plane you can fly within the flying club. So there's a lot of interesting,
pretty much everything related to hobbies, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Emils, coming back to your experience, your most recent and even current experience being at ESTEC. So what are maybe the main advantages or disadvantages that you see from your perspective? Because we heard a very honest story from Gertrud, but you are a trainee. You are not a full-time employee. So how do you see the pluses and minuses of being in ESTEC?
I see a very big plus. I got super lucky with my team. They are super friendly. They knew that they need to put away time to, let's say, devote me to fully get me involved on board in the team. So for me, all of the experience has been only positive. That's not exactly the case for everybody, as Gertrude mentioned. You know, there's plenty of other stories, but I would say I'm on the more lucky side. And I get to not just do some random tasks that don't make sense and nobody's using them, but no, like they assign me real payloads, I'm responsible for it, you know, and then I need to do all the process, everything, and get actual experience, because they say like there's no point of having an intern or something who just takes, you know, minutes of the meeting. You need to give them actual tasks, you know, because you only learn by doing. And I've had the opportunity to do that all along. And
I think that's great to hear about meaningful traineeships, that you're actually doing the practical work, right?
Exactly, that's the whole point. Because there you get the experience, and it's not just a point on your CV, you know, it's actual background that you can give, you know, for what you have done there.
I would like to tackle a bit or ponder upon a bit of the transdisciplinarity or cross-disciplinarity while working in ESA. What is your experience, Emils, in working with people from different disciplines? Do you have experience, and what have been the challenges? Because we said space is about intersections of sciences and knowledge areas. What does it mean in practice?
Oh, I do that every day, because when we are doing the payload safety certification, we have to rely on our subject matter experts who consult us if we have any questions or if it's more complex case or whatever. And there's like 14 different, you know, things that I can ask other experts for their input, and I need to work with them on daily basis.
And do you find it difficult, or do you find it easy to work with people from other disciplines?
I think I've been used to that since like day one in university, because it was also highly diverse environment and you had to work, you know, across different disciplines. So for me, that's not the hardest part. Hardest part is finding free time for the staff to reply to your questions. That's the hard part. It's not working with them. It's finding their free time.
Okay, Gertrude, you are the biochemist by your bachelor's. And have you seen it as an advantage coming from biochemistry field? And how does it feel working in cross-disciplinary environment in the projects you are responsible for?
It's interesting. So for the biochemistry stuff these days, I think it's around 10% of my job where I give expert reviews on activities specifically in that area, which a lot of the time relates to astronaut well-being and plants in space. But for the rest of the time, I'm kind of working with engineers and other disciplines all over the place. One thing I do mention sometimes is that working with engineers, they tend to at one point say, "I'm an engineer." so there is a certain dominance of the engineering mindset in the agency, which is normal because it's predominantly an engineering agency.
How do you overcome that?
I smile politely. And on the same point, when I joined, it was very male-dominated environment as well. So if I remember my early days, it was very often I was by far the youngest person in the room and the only female. So then there were different challenges where I got, asked if I'm here to arrange the chairs into the right, and I said no.
Good.
So it's simply just standing your ground, especially as a young graduate coming in, learning as much as you can as early on from the people around you, and seeking interesting tasks to do. There's always something to do. If you're not specifically given a project by yourself, then you will 100% find something that's interesting. You just need to have the tenacity and sort of keep going for something and not get yourself bent over by everyone on the side.
Right. Thank you. Andrew, there is a question to you. How important it is from which country you are when you are applying to positions? Because we know that ESA is based on the member states and also the contributions the member states make to the budget of ESA. So are countries contribute, or do country contributions play a role in the recruitment process?
Well, I would say one of the unique things, okay, it's about ESA in general, but also related directly to that, is we are the only space agency in the world with multiple different member states. And indeed, we have this principle called geo-return, which I won't get too technical, but essentially it's to, if you're a country and you put in a certain amount of money, you expect a certain amount of contracts, but also staff, people, members to work there. The key thing, though, the only criteria from a HR point of view that I want to emphasize, though, is as long as your flag was represented along the bottom of our presentations, you can apply. And even for some of the internships and young graduates, we have some of the cooperating states that weren't mentioned there. But for sure, in every vacancy notice, we do have a little disclaimer to say we have a strong preference for our underrepresented countries. And as hinted at before, Latvia is one of those because we don't have any Latvian permanent staff at the moment. So right. The good news is that we are paying extra attention for applications from Latvian citizens.
Another encouraging signal.
Yeah. That's why we're here. We're trying to find the next, the first Latvian permanent staff member. But even once we get beyond that point, it doesn't matter. Any nationality criteria really that matters is you're one of our member states or associate member states to be considered as a staff member.
Mm-hmm. Emil's question to you, do the employees and trainees, well, more trainee side, live on site when you are in ESTEC? Do you live on site, excluding sleeping on the desks?
No, you need to find your own accommodation. And in the Netherlands,
how
it's
actually,
hard.
yes, what did it take for you to settle as a trainee? Because I think knowing that Netherlands is very demanded as a destination for students as well as young professionals, not just because of the European Space Agency, but because of the really good universities they have. I mean, this practical side, what did it take you for you to settle practically as a trainee in ESTEC and Netherlands?
So I would say I got super lucky because because they have an actual relocation officer who helps you with these things, especially young graduate trainees, and that's like on the practical aspect of finding housing. But then the young professional organization is also giving out the newcomers guide, to give all you tips and tricks, what you need to know before moving to the Netherlands, and like where to search for stuff, like how to pay for public transport, let's say, how to make sure your bank card will work there, and then all of the practical stuff that you wouldn't know if you hadn't lived in the Netherlands before. So with housing I got super lucky. I had to move the second year though, but then again I got lucky because I already knew many people at ESTEC. I knew who was leaving that specific month, so I could ask in advance and ensure that I have a place to live in. But I know many people who have lived like in a hotel for a month. And you imagine the costs of that in Netherlands.
I can imagine, yes. And I've been to the hotels close to ESTEC, so different ones. Yes.
Can I
Gertrude,
just
you
say,
had a different story, yes?
This part, it's really different. You seem to be a very lucky guy. I'm a very unlucky person. I think I viewed 27 apartments in the 6 first weeks, and I stayed on 6 different couches in this time, still trying to start with a traineeship and actually read those 1,000 pages, and it was all over my head. Very difficult to find a place, but there is a relocation office, there is help around, and mostly it's really helpful to talk to find the community of leaving trainees and actually talk to them and catch that boat. But I think one of the reasons as well for me was that I was absolutely not willing to pay 1,000 euros for a month for an apartment, because I came from Cape Town and I paid maybe 100. So just the different standard I couldn't accept for a long time, but now it's just the reality. So.
Yes, Andrew, please.
Just from the official HR perspective here, I want to say that if you did join as a young graduate trainee or a research fellow, we do offer a relocation bonus, which is basically the equivalent of a month of salary. So even in these kind of extreme, living in a hotel for a month, I hope it doesn't happen like that, you will be covered more than that. Even if it is, it's getting crazy in the Netherlands. Same in Paris, Darmstadt, or other places. But I'd really rely on, you hinted at it, Young ESA, one of the networks we have of the young professionals. The informal networks are oftentimes better than the official ones, I find. So for sure, my colleague Benjamin in ESTEC is amazing at giving advice on also checking your contract to see if it's all in line with Dutch law and stuff like this. But knowing the fact that every 2 years we have about 100 trainees who are leaving, maybe you can take over their apartment, and that's oftentimes what happens. And same for the interns who are even 3 to 6 months. It's a really high turnover. Rely on the informal networks too.
But ESA is so much employee focused. Maybe there is a possibility to build dormitory for trainees within ESA grounds.
I've had this is in my inbox at the moment, and I'm trying to come up with the best response in a legal way. I will say that someone told me an anecdote maybe 15 years ago at ESTEC that there were people living in caravans and cars on site. This is not happening anymore. But there are people who live very close to the office. That's one of the nice things. You can walk or cycle to work.
Yeah. One question about expansion plans of ESA, and there is a question: is ESA planning on expanding their facilities anytime soon? Maybe new spaceport, ground stations, etc.
I mean, in terms of the establishments, let's say, our main establishments, there's been recent additions. So our site in Belgium, in Redu, ESEC, became an establishment relatively recently. It's the same for the one that we had in the UK, in Oxford, EXAT. But then even within the establishments, they are permanently under construction, it seems. I think Gertrude and Emils will confirm that we're building a huge conference center right now to support the events at ESTEC, and I know that there's been extra facilities added to the other establishments too. And then indeed the kind of partner, for example, ground stations, but also we have small offices in Vienna, Washington, DC, Baltimore for some of the more scientific missions as well. There's always some kind of expansion happening somewhere, but that's going to be entirely dependent on the funding from our member states. So I won't anticipate anything before that's confirmed.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, we are gradually coming to the end of our conversation, and we have talked about how much the networking actually matters, and we will be continuing with the networking session right after, where you can continue one-to-one conversations or reflect on what you've heard, and I think you've given a long list of really valuable advice and hints that could serve as an encouragement for someone to take the next steps and actually explore the opportunities, these immense opportunities that this organization is offering. But I will give the last minutes to each of you, saying the last words or the food for thought or maybe some advice to those young aspiring professionals, be them engineers, managers, communication specialists, whatever. As we heard, there is a place for or opportunity for everyone. So what advice or steps would you convey to our audience before we depart?
Well, the first one, and I hope I'm not stealing the answer from either of you while you think, apply. It's a very simple one because, I think I've stolen it.
You cannot repeat what was
Can't
said,
repeat.
yeah? That's the rule.
That's the rule. So I'll talk a bit longer while you can think of a new one. So, no, but it's kind of, I mean, it sounds so simple, but I know for myself, I never thought of ESA as a natural place that I could work as a political scientist working in finance. But you will never know unless you actually do apply. And the second part to this actually is, if needed, keep on applying. You might not get lucky the first time. Not everyone has the same luck as we have over here. And it doesn't mean you're a bad candidate if you're not accepted the first time. It is competitive, but it's not impossible. That's the line that I would like to give. And the tips, just very simple on the application process. Don't use ChatGPT, or if you do, be good at hiding it, because we do detect that. But when it comes to, imagine you're in a final round interview, we really do go step by step through the behavioral competencies that we list. Like I mentioned, the fostering cooperation or teamwork or something like this. Make sure you have some examples ready for each of the competencies we list in the vacancy notice. And a bit like what Gertrude was saying, with the apple picking, it doesn't have to be 100% related to the position. It can be personal, professional, academic. It's more about the way you're thinking. And I actually think my own personal bias, I think, in a way, is more towards these kind of apple picking, unique experiences that maybe make you stand out a bit, because once everyone has all the same CV, that's the kind of thing that makes you differentiated. And I remember one interview where someone was talking about their experience working in a supermarket in a summer job, and it was to do with a multitasking question. And you might think it's completely irrelevant to the thermal engineering position they applied to. And it was in a way, but not in the behavioral sense where we were able to see, this person has a structure, has a logic, they understand the question, they walk through what we call the STAR model. This is like a bit inside, so the situation, task, action, and result. Try and structure your answer a bit around that. That would be my other tip. But don't be afraid to have these kind of quirky examples. In my case, it was the conversation starter with my manager was, I said my favorite book was Pale Blue Dot by Carl Sagan. And that was my inroad to a space on my CV. It really, something so innocuous. It wasn't an internship in space or anything like that, but it showed the passion. So get space on your CV, even if it's just, I like looking up at the stars or something like that. Right. It does matter.
Well, thank you, Andrew, so much. Emils.
All right, I'll try to add on what wasn't said yet. So, but yes, to repeat, you need to apply, but when you apply, you need to make, just like Andrew said, make connections from your experience to the application, because any experience can be connected to this application. You just need to figure out a nice way to do it. And one of the best things I've heard from, actually it was a guy from Switzerland who got the internship after his first year of bachelor's, which is very early. And the thing that stood out on his resume was on the very bottom of it, he drew a small picture of him launching a rocket. And in the interview, that was all they asked about from the actual motivational letter. So it can be, a random stuff like that that makes you stand out from the crowd. He was probably the only one with a picture and motivational letter for that position. So there's tiny things like this, and if you really have the enthusiasm, then ESA is the place to be. As I like to unofficially say, like there is 2 places with the most PhDs per square meter in Europe. It's CERN and ESA.
Right.
And if you can be in one of them, why not?
Yes, why not? Indeed. Gertrude.
So I think we talked about the application and the tips, but if we go a little bit before that, I think it's important to make decisions in your life that are always a little bit uncomfortable for yourself. So always choose the course that is a little bit harder, that you're a little bit less comfortable with. Read the book that is a little bit harder to get through. Make the decisions that make you slightly uncomfortable, because those are the ones that actually bring you true experience later on, that you can capitalize on. And then secondly, the interviews are, obviously we're looking at technical excellence, and they're rough, and it's really, it can be an hour of grilling on technical details, but it always gets to a point where people want to see and understand you as a person. So from my very recent experience from an internal interview at ESA, after an hour of grilling, I was really sweating. They asked me the final question, which was, tell us your best joke. So now I tell absolutely everyone, have a joke in your pocket, because I totally failed the last question, I must say. So just be prepared. And it's a way of understanding you as a person and how you, if you don't have a joke, how do you get out of that situation? So there's so many facets to having a really good interview, but think of a joke.
Right, stepping out of the comfort zone, that's quite, even, I mean, it's a usual phrase we hear, but it really takes a lot, right? Even for me, being with you as a moderator, it is stepping out of the comfort zone, because what I am always afraid of is that those people coming from very technical fields, they will be starting using those super difficult terms that I will not understand. So how I would leave. But I would like to thank you for being a fantastic conversation partners today. We have had a very good, very informative, really practically, conversation packed with practical advice. And I think that has been one wonderful event, and I hope you feel like that as well by listening to what our experts were sharing, their personal stories, professional stories, and suggestions. And yes, thank you once again for devoting the most dearest what we have in our life, and that's the time. And thank you for being with us this afternoon. And I have little thank you present to you, and I might ask for help. So there will be something from Research Latvia that you can practically use, and some little present inside. So thank you once again, and all the best and best wishes. Thank you. Thank you, Emils. Nice meeting you. Andrew, thank you once again. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
And yes, thank you for being in the audience today. And we will continue with the networking part. And yes, have a good afternoon, and hope to see at least some of you tomorrow at the Deep Tech Atelier European Space Day session that I will be also moderating. So I will be around the floor for the coming 2 days. Thank you very much, and all the best in your professional aspirations. Thank you.